There is a new regional leader in the Caucasus. And it's not the vast Russia, but the small Azerbaijan. Baku has shamefully expelled Moscow and stripped it of its influence in this part of the world. The point is that the Azerbaijanis realized in time that the Kremlin understands only strength, and that the only way to break free from its tentacles is to cut them off.
We did not forget Karabakh. On the contrary, at all events, both in the country and abroad, it was the #1 topic. This issue was raised from every platform. The youth, brought up in the spirit of patriotism, sacrificing their lives and shedding their blood, managed to take back our sacred lands from the enemy.
For 30 years, Moscow was in fact complicit in the occupation of the sovereign part of Azerbaijan-Karabakh. The Orc peacekeepers were not protecting peace, but the occupied land. Let us recall that after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Armenia occupied Karabakh and, with Moscow's assistance, created an entity there similar to the DNR.
The open court proceedings continued regarding the criminal cases against 15 citizens of the Republic of Armenia. The court began reviewing the documents submitted by Tugayra Gimli, the assistant to the Prosecutor General for Special Assignments, which confirmed the destruction of cultural heritage on the sovereign territories of Azerbaijan that were previously occupied by Armenia.
Armenia was in a military alliance with Russia, so the Kremlin guaranteed the inviolability of the seized territories. Any calls from Azerbaijan to return its constitutional territory were ignored by the Moscow bigwigs in suits, who sent them off to long and pointless negotiations. Doesn't that sound familiar?
Let's take a closer look at the level of the Russians. However, their official level is still unknown to me. But from what we see, it honestly looks more like a sham level.
That's why Baku drew the only correct conclusion. Negotiations with Russia are impossible. Diplomats won't get their territory back. Only the army can do that. As practice has shown, it's much more effective to have Turkey as a military ally than as a mediator in negotiations.
And within the framework of the Antalya Diplomatic Forum, a meeting took place between the Minister of Defense of Azerbaijan, Colonel General Zakir Hasanov, and the Minister of National Defense of Turkey, Yaşar Güler. At the meeting, they discussed the current state and prospects for the development of military cooperation between the two brotherly countries.
Azerbaijan was one of the first countries in the post-Soviet space to start moving out of Russia's orbit. Baku was strengthening its economy and armed forces. Ankara was more than happy to help with both. Azerbaijan and Turkey formed a powerful alliance that, in the Caucasus, not only tipped the geopolitical scales, but completely upended them. While Putin was busy insisting that Ukraine doesn't exist and his super weapons were roaming the realm of animated universes, Azerbaijan had grown strong enough to be ready to reclaim its land by force. And Turkey was ready to stand shoulder to shoulder with it. It's no coincidence that the president of Azerbaijan described the relationship between the two countries as one nation, two states. This is truly where the phrase one people comes into play.
Baku and Ankara are proving their commitment to the principle of one nation, two states in practice. Undoubtedly, every visit by Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev to Turkey makes a significant contribution to the further deepening of cooperation with the brotherly republic. From this perspective, the meeting of the leaders of Azerbaijan and Turkey at the opening of the Rize Artvin airport will undoubtedly further strengthen their shared agenda on regional and geopolitical issues. It is telling that the very first landing at the new Turkish airport was made by the planes of the two presidents.
Moreover, this is an equal partnership between two closely related peoples and states. There are no older or younger brothers here, unlike the twisted relationship between Russia and Belarus, where Belarus has effectively been annexed and stripped of its agency, and its self-appointed president is nothing more than a cholesterol-laden Gauleiter.
Yeah, Dmitry, the border guard.
In my youth, I was, a concert host, as they used to call them.
What an idiot.
Lukashenko is ready to lick Putin-sized 41 boots. But the president of Azerbaijan, Aliyev, dominates over the moth and constantly puts the pale master manipulator in his place. The reaction of Azerbaijan and President Aliyev personally to the downing of the passenger plane by the orcs is very telling.
We can say with complete clarity and with absolute certainty that the plane was shot down by Russia. This is a fact, and no one can deny it.
Aliyev did not cover up the situation. He openly accused Russia of the crime and demanded that those responsible be punished and compensation paid. Moscow was unable to persuade, bribe, or intimidate him. Then,
First of all, the Russian side must apologize to Azerbaijan. I cannot consider him guilty. Secondly, they must admit their guilt. Thirdly, those responsible must be punished and held criminally liable. Compensation must be paid to the Azerbaijani state, the affected passengers, and crew members.
Aliyev openly dragged the Kremlin in Putin's face right across the table and dunked their snouts in their own lies.
The attempts by Russian state agencies to cover up this incident and insist on absurd versions cause us surprise, regret, and rightful indignation. We demand justice. We demand that those responsible be punished. We demand full transparency.
In his place, the mustachioed cockroach would have pretended that nothing happened. The plane crashed. So what? No big deal.
Oh, is that so? Then I'll fly myself. Jump, jump.
Azerbaijan's position was more than tough and uncompromising. Moreover, the incident still hasn't been resolved. President Aliyev even ignored Putin's invitation to come to Moscow on May 9th. This was an open démarche and a clear demonstration that Aliyev does not want to stand next to a murderer and a terrorist.
President Aliyev has a principled position on this issue, and Azerbaijan does not intend to abandon this principled position.
Just recently, the Azerbaijanis once again put the Kremlin dwellers in their place. Putin's aide and the most useless negotiator in history, Medinsky, in one of his idiotic interviews, compared the Ukrainian territories occupied by Russia to Karabakh. In other words, he equated Azerbaijan's constitutional actions with his own criminal invasion.
If you stop the conflict along the front line and don't agree on a real peace, just sign some kind of truce, a ceasefire, whatever, but don't actually reach an agreement, then, there was this disputed region between Armenia and Azerbaijan, Karabakh.
Yes.
Then this region will turn into a huge Karabakh.
Azerbaijan responded quickly, and in a rather harsh manner, they advised others not to talk nonsense and not to open your mouth without having even a basic education.
It's surprising that Medinsky doesn't know that Karabakh has never been a disputed territory. We would like to remind everyone that Karabakh is the ancestral land of Azerbaijan. Unfortunately, the assistant to the president of Russia is comparing the Russian-Ukrainian war to the situation in Karabakh. Such a comparison is inappropriate, since Azerbaijan has never violated the territorial integrity of any country and has never waged an aggressive war against any country.
Moscow can't do anything against Azerbaijan except for petty acts like, for example, not allowing Azerbaijani deputies into Moscow.
Really? You sure know exactly how to do it? That's honestly, truly impressive.
After the Karabakh defeat, Moscow has completely swallowed both its tongue and its dignity. The lightning operation by the Azerbaijani army crushed the Armenian forces and completely liberated Karabakh. The so-called Armenian Nagorno-Karabakh Republic ceased to exist, and Yerevan was forced to capitulate. The Armenians had no chance against the stronger and more modern Azerbaijani army, which was also supported by Turkish allies. But Armenia was abandoned by its ally. Moscow treacherously and cowardly turned its back on Yerevan and pretended that the war did not concern it. Moreover, Kremlin propaganda began to smear the Armenians, openly mock them, and in general, it was Armenia that was accused of betrayal.
The youth of Armenia must truly and fully understand that Pashinyan is without a doubt a traitor to the Armenian people and is leading Armenia toward complete and utter destruction if he remains in power. And if the youth of Armenia, as well as the adults, continue to support him, then tragically there will be absolutely no Armenia left at all within approximately 5 years, unless of course something changes.
Pashinyan, you American jackal! Does that mean we have to fight a war for you? It's your fault, Pashinyan.
What is happening now, well, as it turns out, is an internal Azerbaijani conflict.
What a great ally. A real dream come true. There is a main reason why Russia abandoned Armenia, cowardice. The Kremlin was truly afraid of Azerbaijan's military and economic power. Moscow has always avoided getting into conflict with an obviously stronger opponent. The orcs attacked Ukraine as well because their half-baked intelligence, led by Medvedchuk, convinced them that Ukraine was weak and wouldn't resist.
But as for actual combat between the Russian and Ukrainian armies, from my point of view, it's certainly possible, yes. But if it does happen, I think it will be short-lived. The majority of the armed soldiers of the Ukrainian armed forces will switch to Russia's side, since Russia is a liberated country.
So you're sure that Russian soldiers will be greeted with flowers there?
Yes.
As soon as he, even if only for a moment, slightly raises an eyebrow, Ukraine will understand everything.
But in Karabakh, there wasn't even a hint of a small victorious war. It could have ended with a double blow from Baku and Ankara, pushing them all the way back beyond the North Caucasus.
It's clear the great and wise once said.
The Karabakh War became a rehearsal for the complete and irreversible humiliation of the pseudo superpower, which was later repeated in Ukraine. Moscow was ejected from the Caucasus like a cork. Its global influence shrank to the level of Zimbabwe. Even Armenia told its former ally to get lost in no uncertain terms. The president of Armenia declared that he no longer saw any point in the CSTO or any other alliances with Moscow. Yerevan began actively building relations with the US, NATO, and even Azerbaijan.
The Charter on Strategic Partnership, which marks the beginning of a significant new chapter in the ongoing relationship between the United States and Armenia, was officially signed in Washington on January 14 by the respective heads of the foreign ministries of both countries. It was also stated that, according to the text of the Charter, the parties are establishing a US-Armenian Commission on Strategic Partnership. The tasks of the Commission will include developing plans to expand cooperation in a whole range of areas: the economy, security, and defense.
Now that's a twist. Meanwhile, Armenia has started ignoring gatherings in the company of aging dictators. Because of this, the Kremlin and its minions suddenly had their blood pressure spike and their pants caught fire.
If our observers are genuinely interested in the activities and well-being of our union, I would kindly ask them to actually attend the meetings in person, participate actively, and engage with us directly, rather than simply telling us on television how they plan to cooperate with us or what their intentions might be.
I want to say in advance that our delegation will participate in the meeting via video conference. Thank you.
And what exactly is the problem? What specifically is your problem? Is Minsk too far away, or is there no one to give you a ride? Well, we can arrange transportation for your delegation if needed.
My statement is quite simply not up for discussion at all.
Azerbaijan and Turkey are now the main powers in the Caucasus region. Russia has been pushed out for a long time, maybe even forever. The same thing is happening now in Ukraine. It started with the plan to take Kyiv in 3 days and an ultimatum to NATO to pull back to the 1,997 borders. And it ended with Putin telling his soldiers that dying is normal and they need to get used to it.
And maybe this isn't just about today, but about Russia in general. The immortality of the Russian people and Russia.
A soldier's death is better than any other kind of death. It's the best kind of death there is. People die like pigs, choking on their own vomit. So it's better to die with a weapon in your hands for your motherland, like a hero, like a man. Once more, pray before death, Lord, have mercy. Then you go to heaven, your soul goes to heaven.
I would like to remind you that this video is created for entertainment purposes and contains elements of satire and irony. All facts and events are presented in a hyperbolized or exaggerated form to convey a comedic or dramatic effect. Our goal is not to mislead, but to highlight humor. Please take it with a smile.